The most important thing about the profile is the fact that it helps us to identify what the key market participants are doing, what their behavior is in the market. And we can do that from a big time perspective by looking at a number of different profiles and profile structures and just look at patterns. Just like we do with candlesticks, we can do it with profile shapes as well. So for instance, let's just focus on this one particular profile right here, which has the letter A above it, and see what it tells us. It's an interesting shape because it has two clusters. Unlike the common normal curves that we have seen previously, this one has two of them. And it actually has a name. It's known as a B-shape profile. And here's what happens. It looks like the letter B. The first cluster was buying, and so take a look at what happened. This buying activity pushed prices higher into a new cluster. And so value shifted up within the same session. But it wasn't any one big buyer that pushed it. It just was sort of an aggregate effect of the market participants. It's not indicative of initiative behavior. It's really indicative of positive market sentiment. Now notice, next day opens here, comes back to test the low of the cluster and shoots higher. So the sentiment that we saw here continued on. So that's what a B profile tells us. Now, by the way, be careful because a B, depending on where the close is, could also indicate that we're going to drop. So if the close happens to be up here, so this was obviously buying. If we had closed in the lower part of the letter B, then we would have been dropping. Another very popular shape that's a very powerful one on the profile, the acronym for it is a pop at the top. All right, you see the letter P. And basically what is happening here, prices moved up, we came to a stopping price. The market begins to trade below the stopping price and then comes back up to revisit that stopping price and ends up closing on a low note again. There's the pop. So if you want an easy pattern, you can keep looking for the pops and then just trade down. When you see a pop at the top, look for a price drop. Okay? And the name for these types of profiles are P-shaped profiles. Now, notice what happened when we had the pop at the top. We came back here and we stalled a little bit. Where, do you remember, where we had the buying activity that initiated this little move up? Notice how we come back and revisit the same area? And we spend a little bit of time. If this buyer was still present that had initiated that sentiment, where would we have likely closed? Above. But where did we end up closing? Below. Prices come back up at the next day, back to the same area. So we've returned back to the same level, and let's take a look at where we close. We now take out the low, extend the range lower, and we close lower. We move on. This is an unfair low. The market sees this as an opportunity to buy. We see buyers come in, and notice what happens. When you begin to see a cluster form and a number of TPOs line up in front of an area that had only had a single print, look for the market to take that out. Because now an area that was once barren, that no one could touch, we're filling it up with activity. And what happens at the end of the day when we had all this activity? Look at where the high is. So was this activity selling or was it buying? Where did it end up? Above. So it was buying. And this was an unfair low in the market. So buyers stepped in and pushed prices back higher. But you would have still made a nice hefty sum because prices did drop quite a bit after the pop before the buyers came in. Another key shape, when you see it in the market, the D shape, when you begin to see a profile towards the end of the day look like the letter D, that's a rotational market. This is one where you could feel comfortable shorting at the top of above the value area high and buying at the value area low. That's a rotational day, the D-shaped profile. So there are some of these rotational session uncertainty, some of these patterns, if you will, that you can identify from the profile. There are many more. This is just to give you a flavor for what's out there.